Hey, I'm glad you're here today. We're wrapping up this series called Under Construction, and we've been talking about developing habits. Our prayer for you, I know our passion, my wife and I have been praying for you guys since the beginning of the new year, especially in the 21-day fast that we just completed last weekend. And what we've been praying for you is that this year, 2019, is your year. I mean, we are really praying that you have an incredible breakthrough this year, that things aren't the way they used to be, that you're going to be able to look back at the end of this year and say, you know what, this has been a better year. And there's some things that we can be very intentional about that will help create that in our lives. We started off talking about developing the habits in our life, because that old saying that Aristotle said, you are today what you've repeatedly done daily. That is so true in our lives, the habits that we have. Now, here's what we know about habit. Habit for most of us has been created by a downhill habit. In other words, those are the habits that are formed through just living life and comforting ourselves. Most of the habits that we have, especially the bad ones, came from comfort. You comfort yourself with medication. You comfort yourself with alcohol. You comfort yourself with food. Come on, somebody. You comfort yourself with somebody that's a little bit crazy in your life. We all have those relationships, But to change our life, we have to be intentional. Now, those habits that we're creating, they're a little bit more uphill. They require a little bit more effort because there's a resistance. For anything good in life, there's a resistance. When you lift weight, what are you doing? You're experiencing resistance, but you're building something. And for you and I, if we're going to build something great in our lives this year, and we are, we're going to apply the principles that we've learned in this series. The first week, we talked about the DNA of a habit. The fact that a habit is a trigger or a cue that invokes an action or a routine that has a reward. And when you do that enough, it could be a good reward or a bad reward. It could be a good habit or a bad habit, but they all have some type of reward. And when you do them enough, a habit goes from conscious thought to unconscious thought and action, to where you just automatically do it and you didn't even think about it. You don't know how you ate that whole bag of Doritos, but you did. You ate them, and you didn't even know how you did it. You just did it. It's out of habit. And a lot of us develop those downhill habits from comforting ourselves. But then the habits that we're talking about for 2019, that we're going to have breakthrough and we're going to have a better year than we've ever had before, those happen from being intentional about it. So we talked about the DNA of a habit. We talked about the priorities, getting in order our life. Pastor Ryan taught that weekend. What an incredible message he brought to us. And what he talked about that week was the habit of picking order, because order matters big time. Some people think that it doesn't matter what order you do it. Cain and Abel, remember the story of Cain and Abel? Abel brought his sacrifice first to the Lord, and the scripture says that in time, over a period of time, Cain brought his. What was wrong? Why did God reject Cain's? Because he had it out of order. Order matters. We've done the illustration where you get a big bucket and you put the golf balls in the bottom first, then you put the rocks, then you put the smaller rocks, then you put the sand, then you put the water, and you can fit them all in there. You take the same equal amounts and you do it in reverse. You put the water, then the sand. You'll find when you get to the golf balls, there's not enough room. I'm telling you, order matters in your life. Then the next week, we talk about thought, the habit of thinking right. As a man thinks in his heart, so is he. We talked about managing your thought life, thinking on certain things intentionally, and that's an important one. Then last week, we talked about our purpose. Remember that? We talked about filtering your thoughts and decisions through purpose and the reason that God made you and the reason that God created you, filtering the decisions that you make through why you're here. What am I here for? Am I here by accident? No, God has a plan for you. So our whole reason in doing this is Jeremiah 29:11. God says about each and every one of us, I know the plans that I have for you, plans to prosper you, to give you hope and a future, not plans to bring you destruction, hurt, or harm. No, God has great plans for you. And then the key to that is Romans chapter 12. We've brought that scripture forward every every installment through this series, and that is that you fix your attention, fix your mind on Christ, renewing your mind. It's then, and it's at that point that you fix your attention. Everybody has attention. You're giving it somewhere. But when you fix it on Christ and His Word, your mind is renewed, your perspective changes, you think differently, you view the world different, you view marriage different, you view life different. You see it completely different when your mind is renewed. But the byproduct of that is, he said, once you do that, you then begin to understand the will of God for your life. That's a big question everybody has. What does God want me to do? Do I go that way, or that way, or that way, or this way? The key to finding that out for your particular life is to renew your mind with God's Word and to fix your attention on Christ. Then that happens. So that brings us to today's message, which is the habit, which most people wouldn't think of a habit, but it is the habit of relationship. Now, I'm not talking necessarily about marriage, but I will be talking about it in this next series. We're going to start a brand new series next week called The Art of Attraction. And in this, we'll talk about communication and how we communicate. We'll talk about single people, how to choose it. How do you know if it's the right one? How do you go hunting and scoping for the right one? We'll talk about how to fight right, that when you are doing life with people, people are people. We'll talk about how to manage conflict. We'll talk about that. And anyway, it's going to be a great series, so don't miss an installment. You might say, well, my marriage is good. I don't need that. Well, you can help somebody else then, because you're a good coach, all right? And if you have the desire to be married someday, this is going to be a good one for you. It's going to be really good, because it's better to learn before than learn through the school of hard knocks, which is the way that most of us have learned, right? Most of us have done that way. So we're going to talk about relationship today, friendship today, and being intentional in our habit. Now, I said most people don't think about relationships being a habit. The truth is most of us don't equate habits with relationship. But I want to challenge you in this area to be very intentional in your relationships. Why? Because hands down, the most important choices in your life are the people you befriend. Hands down. There's just not much more in life better than the people you choose to be with, because my kids hear me say this, I probably drive them crazy with this. Show me your friends. I'll show you your future. Why? Because we become like those we do life with. And it's true for adults too. We all would say yes to our teenagers, but it is true for us as well, that who you do life with, you become like. Now, why this is important, go with me for just a second. Most people choose their friendships, well, they don't choose them, they experience them by default. And there's one thing we've learned through this series, is that the path of least resistance is usually the wrong choice. A lot of us have friendships by default. It's just, we were doing life. We worked with them. We became good friends with them. We lived next door to them. We became good friends with them. Or the list could go on and on. But here's what happens in relationship. People bundle. Here's an example of what I mean by people bundle. You could take 400 people, put them in a room, and within 20 minutes, I don't know how it happens, but it happens, within 20 minutes, all of the gossips find each other. Really, it's true. In 20 minutes, the 10 people that gossip out of the 400, they're all best buddies now. We're gossiping together. Oh, you got to hear this. Come here. You won't believe what I'm going to share with you. I don't know how it happens, but it happens. It happens with people that have self-esteem issues, people who have been damaged. Like you can fill a room full of 400 people. I always say this, within 5 minutes, all those that are damaged in their soul and their personality, they're buddies, they're friends. It just happens in life. So what I'm saying to you is, if you are hardwired by God for a relationship, and you are, The reward of life always comes through relationship. On a small scale, it works the opposite way too, because like, for example, I've been invited to preach at other churches, or I've been at a conference at another church, and when I'm out of town, I am not going to White Castle to eat. I want to go find a good restaurant in that city to experience something I haven't experienced before. Come on. But here's the problem. I'm usually by myself when I do. It's awkward. It feels weird. I'm experiencing this great food, this good vibe, this neat place, and I'm all by myself. You're not made to live that way. You are made to do life, eyeball to eyeball, people to people. Friendship, experiences matter. Experience with God and experience with people. You're hardwired for that. God made you to live life and do life with friends and with people. And by the way, friends either make you better or they make you worse. It's like a good attitude or a bad attitude. A friend is like that for you. And so I would encourage you to not have friendships by default. But when I was talking about bundling, here's what happens to a lot of us, is just like we have all of these habits that we've developed in our life. We could call it baggage or bad habits or addictions that we've all developed at different times in our life. A lot of times they come from comforting ourselves. We try to comfort ourselves. And so there are friendships that we have developed by default that bring comfort to us because somebody will get down and wallow with us. Are you with me? And then all of a sudden you've got a friendship that maybe is not exactly the right one. We need to pick friendships that stretch us. This is how you're going to grow. This year's going to be better if you'll be very intentional about finding someone who's living the kind of life that you want to live, kind of almost a mentor type situation, but they're a little bit further ahead than you in some areas. Go take them to lunch and pay for their lunch. Go be around them. Go stretch and be with them. All right? It'll help you. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to choose our relationships very carefully. No more of this just like, we're friends. When did you guys become friends? I don't know. I don't even know how it happened. We're just good friends. No. We ought to be very intentional about choosing who we're friends with. If you think I'm making this up, here's the verse for you. Proverbs chapter 27, verse 19. A mirror reflects what a man's face looks like. But what he's really like is found by the friendships that he keeps. Come on, somebody. So we could say this. That's what you look like in the mirror, but what you really are like are the people you've yoked up with and you do life with. Which y'all are in good company, so I'm preaching to the choir today. But you're going to go share this with somebody else, I'm sure. Here's the next thing that we need to do. We need to nurture our important relationships. There's a handful of relationships in your life that are very important to you. Your husband, your wife, your children, different people in your life. You can take them for granted. Sometimes you just can take them for granted because they've always been there. It's easy to do that. But I'm talking about nurturing them. One guy came to me a couple years ago and he said, Pastor, my marriage is just dead. We live in the same house. We're married together, but there's no passion, no fuel. Neither of us have a dream. Neither of us are excited to be with one another. It's cold, cold, cold. The fire is gone. And he's blaming it on the marriage. And the Lord just dropped this in my spirit to share this with him. Hey, it's not the marriage. That's like going to your fireplace and saying, that fireplace is so stupid. It's so cold. There's no fire in that fireplace. Well, the only way there's going to be a fire in that fireplace is if you go get some sticks and go get some wood, go get some newspaper, go get some matches, light the match. Light the newspaper. Fireplace is just neutral. Hey, marriage is just neutral. You got to put another log on the fire. It's harder to start a fire than it is to keep one going. But once you get one going, the good news is put a log on the fire. We'll talk more about that in the next series, but come on, put the log on the fire. By the way, next series, we probably ought to put some age-appropriate content, just saying we have great children's ministry, but if your child is 12 years old or older, they'll hear worse stuff at school than we're going to share in here. So, I don't know why it's so awkward in church. People get like, get out in the workplace and people are like, they let their hair down. But in church, I don't know if we can talk about sex. I'll move on. All right, I see it. It's already started. You got to nurture the important relationships in your life, and that includes working relationships. How many of you know your relationship with people is important? 1 Peter chapter 4 says, the end of all things is near, therefore be clear-minded, self-controlled. In other words, think right. Above else, I love the way God is tying all this in. Love each other deeply, because love covers over a multitude of sins. This past midweek service, we talked about the grace of God, and we talked about how so many of us, 81% of Christians surveyed by Barna Group, 81% describe Christianity as a set of rules or laws to be kept. I thought, how unappealing is that? No wonder somebody doesn't want to go to church. If you think it's a bunch of rules, what is that? No, it's not a bunch of rules. Christianity is the love of God's grace, and you experiencing that unconditional love. That's why that's in our mission statement. Enjoy Church, to exist, to lead people to experience the unconditional experience and enjoy the unconditional love of Christ. And the second part is this. It is to help them reach their full potential in him, not to put anybody under a bunch of rules. You know what Jesus said? There's one rule. One rule. It's called the rule of love. You know the cool thing about love, it's not a negative. It's not like you have to grit, I got to quit this, I got to quit that. Just love. Love what? Love God and love people. It's all wrapped up in that. You keep all the rules when you do that. It's cool. And there's forgiveness for you. So keep that. Here's the second one, or the next one, restore broken relationships. Now, this one people misunderstand sometimes, because there are broken relationships that have happened because they have violated you. Maybe it's sexual abuse or abuse, or somebody is stealing from you or something like that. You still need to forgive them, but I give you permission. There are certain relationships to protect yourself. You can love at a difference. How you doing over there? Bye. Good to see you. I love you. That's okay. But you still have to, in your heart, forgive them. But what I'm mostly talking about today is restore the broken relationships of moms and dads and grandmas and cousins that you need to love them. Forgive them. Colossians 3 says, bear with each other. Come on, we rub each other sometimes. Forgive whatever grievances you have against one another. Forgive as the Lord forgave you. You know, one of the things that makes a relationship so valuable is when you've had the opportunity to pull away because you've had a little bit of grit, a little bit of grind in the relationship. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we can say we love each other. Oh, I love you. You're so cute. You're so beautiful. And then we get to know each other. It might be a little bit of a different story. You got a personality. You don't wake up happy every day. You know what I'm saying? You got a little bit of a So, when you've had that opportunity and you stay, the value of the relationship goes up. Every relationship has a value quotient. And when you have gone through the tunnel of conflict together and you come out the other side with commitment, I still love you. I'm still committed to you. You're not running me away. You got me. I'm here. You're going to have to leave me because I ain't leaving you.
There you go.
And do you know the value of the relationship goes up? We're thinking in terms of husband and wife, but it's that way in our church. When we do life together, how many of you know people are people and people will be people? And sometimes it's not even that they did anything bad, it's just personality conflicts, right? But when we commit, we are family. We may not agree, but we're in unity. The value of our relationship goes sky high. Proverbs 13 says this, he who walks with the wise will grow wise, but a companion of fools will suffer. My dad used to read this scripture. I didn't put it in your note. I probably should have. 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 33 says this, make no mistake about it. Bad company corrupts good character. Oh, I can hear my dad's voice right now. He just hammered that. No, I'm not going to let you go hang out with them. I could hear him saying that today. Anyway, restore broken relationships, sever harmful relationships. Now, when I say harmful relationships, I'm talking about the relationships that make you, well, let me describe it this way. Let's say you've got a friend that you never have a gossiping problem. You're pretty good about it. But when you're with them, you're like, and you walk away and you go, I never do that except for when I'm with them. They bring out the worst in me. Or guys, you might know about this. You've got a friend that every time you're with him, you're trying, well, before you're with him, you're living morally right and your thought life's pretty much under control. But when you get around him, he's like, look at her. Oh, come here, check out that. And you are like, oh. And then you go home, whether it's the gossip or the negativity or the lust or whatever it is, and then you go home and you just feel like you need a shower. Jesus, forgive me. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. Sever harmful relationships. Love them from a distance. Get them in church and love them at a distance if it's pulling you down. Make sense? And then this one, initiate. This is the one that I really want you to get a hold of. Initiate meaningful relationships. Proverbs 2:20 says, join the company of good men and women. Keep your feet on tried and true paths by being around the right people. When you do that, and church is one of the greatest places to do that. I'm just sharing with you. Hebrews says, don't give up meeting together, as some are in the habit of doing. Some people think you don't need to go to church. But did you know that over 30 times in the New Testament, the Bible specifically talks about you being planted in a local church, a local body, a local gathering, because that's where real church growth happens, is when you plant your roots deep in a local body. Over 30 verses talk about that. That's why it's important to get the right one. I would love for it to be this church. Maybe if you're an attender here, we would love for you to keep attending, but at some point you need to become a member. Develop your relationship with my church. You need to be able to say, that's my church. Capital M-Y, that's my church. In other words, what I'm saying is you need to become an owner of your church. This is my church. I'm responsible for it. I love it so much. I care about trash and paper. I don't see a greeter on that door. I'm going to go be a greeter. I'm not even on the list, but I'm going to go be a greeter just because I don't see one over there. It's ownership. It's my church. See, if you're attending, you're welcome to attend as long as you want to attend. I know that sometimes people have had situations in life, they just need to attend for a while, chill out for a while, see if it's the right place for you. But at some point, let me explain it this way. When I first met my wife, she wasn't my wife. She was just Laura. She was an attender. I was an attender. What did we attend? We attended restaurants together, movies together, we attended. But at some point, we became members. We put the rings on, we committed. We went from attendership to membership. And church, let me share it with you this way. Membership has its benefits. Come on, you can read between the lines. Membership has its privileges. Yeah, you get it, don't you? Did you know it's the same way in church? When you go from attending to where you put the wedding ring on and say, this is my church, let me tell you, the benefits and the privileges of membership go to a whole new level. You get to do things you couldn't do before. You're still using your imagination the other way, but I'm all right with that. You can do that. But it does have its privileges. Listen, Here's one of the 30 verses, Ephesians 2:19. You're members of God's very own family and you belong in God's household. In the Greek, that word household is your local church. There's something incredible about that. Number 2, develop relationships with godly friends. What do I mean by a godly friend? A godly friend is kind of opposite of that other situation. An ungodly friend is somebody that when you're with them, you do bad, you think bad, you behave bad. Are you with me? But a godly friend is somebody that just takes you up, somebody that inspires you, somebody that motivates you to be like a better person. I love that. Have you guys ever met someone, I'm sure you have, and hopefully it happens here at church quite a bit. Have you ever met someone that when you meet them, you have this feeling or you have this thought, now that is somebody I could be friends with for the rest of my life? Have you met someone like that before? I meet people like that all the time. Now that is somebody I could be friends with for the rest of my life. Their personality, their persona, the way they carry themselves, the way they think, I could be friends with them for the rest of my life. You know how to get friends like that? Become that type of a person. What if you present yourself, no need, you're not there to get, you're there to give. What if you became that type of a person that when someone said about you, I could be friends with you for the rest of my life. I just like you. I like the way you think. I like the way you carry yourself. I like the way you are. So the way to get friends like that is to become that person. As you become that person, you'll find those type of people show up in your life all around you. All of a sudden you're like, man, I've got more friends I know what to do with. And they're quality friendships. They're just good. I think that's a neat thing. Acts chapter 2, verse 44 says, all the believers met together constantly and they shared with each other everything they had. We meet on Sundays because in Acts chapter 2, Christ rose from the grave on a Sunday. They started meeting publicly Sunday, so the church still does that all the way to this day. But then they also did something else. They constantly met house to house. You're going to hear the announcement in just a minute of our small groups that are starting up. One of the great things you can do is get in a group. But hey, let me give you an idea. What if you started a group and you kind of led a group? Well, Pastor, I don't know enough of the Bible. I don't know that I could lead a small group. I didn't go to Bible college. Our groups are not designed for you to teach anyway. That's not the DNA of our group. The DNA of our group, the purpose of our group is relational Christian fellowship. So you could have a sewing group, a bicycle riding group, a hiking group, a card playing group, a girly group, a manly group. I don't care what kind of group. Just get in a group, start a group, lead a group. We'll teach you how to lead your group. We've got some parameters. You don't meet more than an hour and a half because you'll lose your group real quick. If you turn it into a 3-hour meeting every week, that don't float, right? So we got a few parameters to help you do a good group, but you can do a group. You could do one, and they're going to be starting pretty soon. Why I'm pumped about groups is because we can come to church every week in a big church like this, say hi, say bye, know each other's faces, but you don't really know until you have someone in your life that you can say, hey, I'm dealing with a situation. I'm talking about habits. This is about habits. Being intentional about finding godly friends, and you connect with 4, 5, 15 people. Just a great way to do it. Number 3, develop a team. One of our mindsets, and we talk about it here quite often here at Enjoy Church, is the mindset of a team mentality. It's kind of like the Navy SEALs. We use that analogy quite a bit. If a Navy SEAL sees somebody else that behaves like a Navy SEAL, he doesn't ever go up to him and say, hey, were you one of the SEAL guys? Were you in the SEALs? They don't say that. Here's what they do say. They say, hey, you look like a team guy. And they'll say, oh yeah, I was in the team and I was in blah, blah, blah team. And here's what I want to say about us. If we view our mentality as a team and we're developing teams, we have teams all through Enjoy Church. It's really incredible because the teams are our power to reach our world for Jesus, everybody. It really is our ability. Ecclesiastes, Solomon talked about a man that's alone, and all he had was his toil. His eyes never were content with the wealth that he created. Solomon says two are always better than one because they have a better return on their labor. There's something that happens in teams that multiplies our effectiveness. And if we'll all begin to think of ourselves as a team, we're one big team, but we're all broken up into little teams. We have our guest services team. We have our media team. We have our children's team. We have the small group teams. We're all part of smaller teams within the big team for Christ and for one another. And then we develop our relationship with God. A businessman came to me a few years ago. He started attending our church, and he came up to me after the service, and he said, "Pastor, I'd like to have lunch with you because I'm really thinking about becoming a member, going from an attender to a member here at Enjoy Church. Can I have lunch with you?" I said, "Absolutely." So we went to lunch. Man, he began to fire questions at me. I felt like that he was interviewing me for a job. It was amazing. I felt all this like pressure. What do you feel about this? What do you think about this? What do you want to do with that? What's your dreams? What's your goals? What's your personal goals? What do you want to do personally? What is the church? What's the dream of the church? And I tried to answer all of them. And I said, "What's your thoughts? Why are you doing this?" He said, "Well, Pastor, I'm really thinking about this is going to be my church home." But he said this, "I do not want to be a member and invest my time, my energy, my tithe, and my finances in a church that is not a big dreaming church, that doesn't have big, huge dreams." And I said, "Well, I'm glad you feel that way because most of the time when I share, I scare." I do. Most of the time when I share the big vision with people, they go, "Oh, dear Jesus, you're going to ask me for $10 million. No, I'm only asking you for $1 million, all right? 10 million is the other guy. And here's the point, though. Here's the point. I'm being silly, but here's the point. Enjoy Church. We've got some big, huge dreams of God using us, this local body here at O'Fallon, here at Alton. And there's campuses that you know not of yet that are going to come. We're going to reach thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people. My prayer is that you have a big enough mindset in our teamwork together that we're going to develop a relationship with God like we've never experienced before. And God's going to entrust to us a big old vision to pull off. My prayer, I've got this vision. I do daydreaming once in a while, and I've daydreamed about this many times of all of us, Enjoy Church, and some of you that aren't here yet that will be here. I've daydreamed about all of us in heaven someday and us high-fiving and being together and celebrating, and us together going, "He's coming, he's coming. Here he comes, here he comes." And who is it? It's Jesus. And I daydream about him walking up to this group, all of us, and especially those of you that stuck with it. You did the hard stuff, man. When it was hard, you were here. These guys right here, I remember us setting up and tearing down when there was 10 or 12 people sometimes. And they didn't gripe and moan about it. Except one. But he got it right. I'm playing. I knew when you guys started laughing, he's behind me making faces, right? Here's the point. Someday, we're going to literally stand in heaven. This will literally happen. I know it will. And Jesus will walk up to this group and he'll say, "Hey, Enjoy Church, come here, everybody. You guys were freaks. Man, you had faith like very few people did. You believed me for the big stuff. You didn't play it safe. You weren't a bunch of pansies. You weren't sissies. You were like, I'm putting it all out there." And I could just see Jesus going, "Oh, knuckle bump, high five, elbows, come on, dance." Yes. Why wait, though, till we get to heaven to start celebrating and believing big? Let's go ahead and do that right now. Let's go ahead and do that. Jeremiah 29 says, if you'll look for me with your whole heart, you'll find me. I guess what I'm saying is the key is the relationship with God is a wholehearted, not a half-baked relationship or half-butt. Did he say that? Yes, I did. Some of us in life can just serve God half-heartedly, but I'm talking about going all in. This year's going to be a good year for you. I prophesy that over you in Jesus' name. 2019 is your year. It is going to be your year, but we're going to be intentional about it in Jesus' name.